everybody. Welcome. My name is Eric. I run the Sustainable SuiteScript community over at Stoic Software for NetSuite developers. And I'm here today with Jeff Rutledge, one of Salto's customer engineers. How you doing, Jeff?
Doing well. How are you?
Good. Good.
Hope
Well, like
they're
I
in
said, this is
well too.
number 7, 8, something like that. So all year, uh, Salto and I have partnered up to present these live demonstrations of the Salto platform and how it supports the NetSuite ecosystem. So this month, we wanted to cover how Salto can help you back up your NetSuite account, your customizations, and then restore those customizations to any sort of known state, known point in its history. So in our accounts, it's pretty common to have a lot of customizations spread out across multiple accounts, production, sandboxes, etc. And it can be pretty complicated to move those around and back those up and know which account is in which state. And Salto helps you sort of wrangle all that. And Jeff is going to show you how that all works. But a little bit of housekeeping before we get started. So we have scheduled a full hour for this, but we are reserving plenty of that time to answer any of your questions. So the chat and the Q&A are both open for this webinar. I'll be keeping an eye on that throughout the presentation. So if you have a question for me, for Jeff, go ahead and drop that in the Q&A tab. And the session is also being recorded. It will be sent to you via email if you're here live. And it will also be posted on Salto's YouTube channel thereafter, where you can also find all the other demos I've done with Jeff and a few other customer engineers. So go ahead and check out Salto's YouTube channel for if you've missed any of these other demonstrations throughout the year. And then lastly, I want to just start us off by highlighting the mission of the Salto platform. So Salto is not a consulting company. They're not looking to sell you any services or anything like that. They are a software company that has built a powerful DevOps platform for business application teams to plan, review, deploy, and monitor changes to their business platforms. And Salto supports platforms like NetSuite, of course, but also Salesforce, Zendesk, Jira, and a whole host of others. So if you want to check out the platform for yourself, you can go to salto.io where you can sign up for a free 30-day trial, and you can also register for a free personalized demo, maybe even with Jeff.
Yeah, hopefully.
With that, Jeff, I think I'm going to kick it over to you. Why don't you take us
Okay.
into the demonstration? I
Sounds
will
really good.
stop sharing.
I will start.
The floor is yours.
Excellent. Thanks, Eric. Okay, cool. Welcome, everybody. It's nice to be here again. First, to start off, it would be great if we can put up a little poll here to indicate how many of you have been exposed to Salto before.
Yeah,
So
the
it'd be
poll is live.
great. So if we can get a picture of that, that'll help me just guide the conversation a little bit. And Eric or one of the other panelists, if you could just kind of put something in the chat when the results come in, that would be awesome.
Yep. I'll just interrupt you. I'm watching
Thank
it.
you. That's perfect. Okay, awesome. Yeah, so this is the Salto user interface that we're looking at here. Down the left-hand side are all of the applications I'm connected to. I'm gonna give you a little bit of an overview of Salto first, and we're gonna go into the topic at hand, which is the backup and restore of NetSuite environments. Down the left-hand side, you see lots of applications I'm connected to, and then, as Eric mentioned, it's not just NetSuite, also Salesforce and Zora and Mercado and all kinds of things, Zendesk, Jira, even things like Okta and Entra and those sorts of applications as well. And really what we do is we scan the applications we're connected to for all the configuration elements and information. We ask their APIs lots of questions, and the results of those questions are kind of put into this map of any particular application. In our case, we're just going to focus on the NetSuite applications. I'm currently connected to at least a couple of NetSuite applications. There are others, but I've got a dev environment that I'm connected to and a prod environment I've connected to. And on a regular basis, daily typically, we fetch any updates to that configuration of NetSuite and the other applications. And that shows up in this map, like I said. So things like, save searches, currencies, roles, workflows, fields, scripts, all the suite scripts, etc. That's all captured as part of this really nice map. And I'm getting to the point here about backups, but I think that we sort of get backups as a result of all the background work we do. It almost comes for free for us. And so when we get this map, it has all kinds of great stuff in it, like the information around the configuration of a role. Like that's you might want to look at a particular role and see how it's configured. So this is the configuration of that role, and including all of its permission settings. And then at the bottom, it's also providing me some information on what the dependencies are. So this role is used in a few places. It's used in a client script, some transaction forms, a workflow, a couple of just the one workflow, but it's used in 3 different places in that workflow. And I can dig into that and see exactly where in the workflow. Now I'm looking at the workflow configuration, and I'm seeing that this role here is used in this particular way. So it's a nice way of understanding your NetSuite environment. So that's one of the core values you get out of Salto on 10 minutes after you connect, is this big map of everything that's configured and everything that is related to each other. Now, the reason I'm talking through all that up front is not because not only do you get that value, but since we actually do this process on a regular basis, up to hourly, if you'd like, although for NetSuite, it's typically daily or on demand. I can run a fetch anytime I'd like to, and it would just kick off another process of reaching out to NetSuite and asking it all those questions and then updating our map. But at least daily, typically, we create this a log of all the changes that have ever happened. So every time we do a fetch, we have a record of that fetch. Not only what it did, this fetch particularly, it changed. It noticed 28 elements that were different from the previous fetch. So that's one interesting thing you get. We can look at those fetches and say, like, what was different from the previous fetch yesterday, and so we can see things like, this workflow action script got deleted since yesterday. This transaction form got modified. And now you're starting to see here, by the way, the underlying structure of that map. We saw before in the Explore view, there is this sort of nice, friendly way to look at the structure. We actually store it underlying as text files. And the really cool thing about that is that we can do things like full text searches or side-by-side comparisons. But for our purposes today, we can also take those text files and put them into a source code control system. Now, we can put all this stuff into your GitHub repos or Git repos, but we also store it in our own underlying repos as well. So that's where we get this power of being able to back up and restore. You don't need to worry about Git for this functionality. We can do everything here without you having to worry about Git. But we do see that these, this is the fetch, and this is the exact things that are different in the fetch. So I know exactly what happened between some earlier fetch and now. But the point of all that is saying that every single fetch we conduct, it actually stands as a snapshot of the entire environment. So not only do we get the information about what changed from the last fetch, but this whole this particular fetch stands now as a snapshot of NetSuite from the entire configuration. I'll stop there for a moment. Is there anything that anyone has questions about? Any commentary you've got, Eric?
No questions or chat yet. I did want to mention that according to the poll, 77% of folks here have never tried the Salto platform. So
okay, great.
lots
Well,
of
then
new faces.
Excellent. Well, then please do ask questions about the broader. If you don't understand what Salto, how we kind of get to this ability of doing backups and recoveries, then please do chime in and let me know if there's some other questions I can answer. Don't feel constrained to just the backup topic. Cool. So as you can see, I've done lots and lots of fetches going way back in time. This is just showing me the last 3 months. But if I go back, I could go back to 18 months ago, and it'll load up all the change log for the last 18 months. If I go farther than that, it's going to get a little long in the tooth. But and then I can go back in time and say, look, okay, so there's a couple of use cases here for having a restore requirement. Maybe there's a script that worked a long time ago that stopped working, right? So I want to go way back in time to, I don't know, how about January of this year? and say, okay, there was a full fetch at that point. I want to go and fetch a particular element from that and restore just that one element. So if I click on that restore button, what's going to happen here is Salto is going to compare the version of the fetch that it saw on January 3rd to the latest fetch. So that was today, 20 minutes ago, as a matter of fact. And so it's going to be able to understand all and every difference between those two, and only those differences. It's just going to show me what's different about the configuration then and the configuration now. It takes a minute or so for Salto to construct the data structures to figure that out. But this, by the way, his name is Knuckles. He's hard at work doing the work in the background. Those text files you saw earlier that constitute the map of your environment, those are stored in a format we call .nacl, because that's the salt. So they're called NACL files, and that's why we named him Knuckles. So what we see now is that there are quite a number of differences between January and now. So there's almost 1,400 differences. There's a bunch of additions, a bunch of modifications, a bunch of deletions. And so I can do things like I can look in the file cabinet and look at, I don't know, a Sweet script, for example, and I can see that there were these differences. So a bunch of Sweet scripts were deleted. So these ones here I can add back because I found them in my source environment, but they don't exist in my target environment. So I can add those back if I needed to grab that as a restore point. There might be some other ones down here somewhere that have been modified. Here's one that's been modified, and I can actually see the specific differences on a line-by-line basis. What's different about these two Sweet scripts? So in this case, there was, when I edit stuff, I just mostly add comments, but line by line, side by side, we can see what's different about those Sweet scripts, and I can choose to restore those Sweet scripts from scratch. One thing I meant to do, maybe I'll do that in the next demonstration. So here we go. We see some Sweet scripts from a long time ago. There's a couple here that are missing. I would like to put those back, and so I can just now go and restore those Sweet scripts back into the file cabinet. Either restore them because they're not there, or restore the version of that Sweet script that existed back in January. So this gives you like full versioning on a daily basis of all of your scripts and configuration. Then the next thing I'm going to show you is after I deploy this. So this is just saying, all right, cool. There's some 3 things that I'm going to restore. A couple of them indicate or trigger some validations. This is a Sweet script. It's not actually referenced by a script record, so it's just letting us know that these are just disembodied scripts going into the file cabinet. Salto does some fancy footwork around validating what we're asking Salto, or what we're asking NetSuite to do. And so in this case, it's like, hey, don't forget, there's you might need to create some script records. If those script records did exist, I could go and grab those two and restore those. They didn't, because these were just my own CI/CD testing stuff. All right, cool. So I'm going to deploy that. It's going to deploy back to my prod environment, and that's effectively going to constitute a restoration of those elements from my old version of production to today. So it's busy going to go and recreate all those files. We can go into my production environment and look at one of those, for example, and prove that it got added back into the environment. I'll do that for fun. So there's this one here, which is the Sweet script called client script 2. It's in GWR. It's in my GWR directory. Okay, great. So I'm going to go over to NetSuite here, and I'm going to go to documents, documents, Sweet scripts, and look in my GWR directory, where we should see something that was updated just now. Last modified 11/21. There's one, right? So we just did that one right now. That one got added. This one here got modified. The comments got added back in, and so now we're back to the version of this file when it was back in January. Cool. So that's kind of the first use case. It's like, oops, or geez, this used to work. That's a nice use case for being able to support backup and recovery. Another really key use case is
can I interrupt you for a minute here?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, I think it's worth pointing out a couple things maybe explicitly that you didn't. But even though, because Salto is like pulling this stuff out, it's extracting this data from NetSuite and storing it separately. even though these things were deleted, completely deleted from NetSuite, we still have them. Like we still have a backup of them and we can still restore them. So even though they are completely gone, you could have wiped them out from all of your NetSuite accounts. They're still
Yep.
stored in Salto's Git repository. So you still have that history and thus that ability to restore them.
Yeah.
And then also with the restore capability, even though we have a snapshot of all the customizations in the account, you don't have to restore the account to the whole snapshot. You get to go in and selectively restore
Mm.
individual elements, changes, differences. That so you don't have to do the whole snapshot. It's not an all or nothing. You get to very selectively have targeted restoration, which I think is
Yeah.
really important
Okay.
when we're
That's
dealing with the
absolutely,
volume of customizations that we have.
you bet. Yeah, that's a great couple of points there. And I'm going to come back to your first one in a moment
Great.
because I want to do a fetch and that might take a minute or two. So let me come back to that. Remind me to talk about the comfort you get from that in terms of tech debt.
Sure.
So the other use case that's very common for our customers is doing refreshes. Oftentimes there's a refresh of a sandbox that's required, but there's a bunch of developers and administrators out there saying, wait, please don't do that, because if you do that, you're going to clobber a bunch of work in progress that I've got. And so there's always this sort of dance around how do I coordinate properly a refresh a refresh of your sandbox. So I'm going to simulate that now. I'm going to do it in prod, but pretend this is a sandbox. Actually, this is a test drive, so you can consider this as a sandbox. But I'm going to do things like I'm going to clobber this workflow, right? So if this workflow is something that was in flight in a sandbox prior to a refresh, and production does not have this workflow yet, after the refresh, this workflow will be gone. So I'm going to simulate that just by deleting the workflow. And I'm going to delete a few other things too along with that, because it gets more interesting when there are several things in flight. So this workflow was part of a project where several things were being worked on. So the workflow itself, but also there were some transaction body fields. I'm going to go and delete a couple of those too. There's some transaction body fields that are needed for this workflow. So I'm going to get rid of that one. Delete. Okay. So this you can think of this as the refresh process, slowly clobbering my sandbox. Maybe I'll delete one more just for good measure. And then in addition to that, there was also some scripts. So I'm going to clobber a script and its corresponding entry in the file cabinet. So here's the script record, delete, gone, right? The refreshes continuing to clobber my environment. And finally, I'm going to go and look at my suite scripts. I'm going to go into the directory where that suite script is actually referenced, and I'm going to delete the actual file, the JavaScript file in the file cabinet too, because this is also going to get clobbered post refresh. So you can kind of think that I've just done a refresh, and now my sandbox is missing a bunch of stuff that I was working on, and I'm kind of me as the developer of that stuff is like, oh, I forgot to back up a few things or whatever. Never fear, Salto to the rescue. So first thing I'm going to do though is run a fetch. So and while that's fetching, the process would be when you're doing a refresh is you would have Salto fetch the day before the refresh, and then after the refresh you would run another fetch, and now I've got a difference that I can compare. So while that fetch is running, I'm going to go back to a point that Eric was making earlier about the other one of the other really great use cases for Salto is around tech debt. So technical debt, accumulates all the time in NetSuite. There are people do not delete stuff from NetSuite, right? They only ever add things, and there's a number of reasons for that. But one of them is that it's like, oh, I don't know what's dependent on what, and so I need to be really careful about doing that deletion. Salto can give you those dependencies before you do the deletion. But even more importantly to this particular topic is that if you delete, say, 5 or 6 suite scripts that you think are no longer needed, and you find, in a day or two, someone's calling you up saying, why isn't such and such working? You can easily restore. So you can kind of do these deletions and do the tech debt cleanup that you want to do to make the environment more reasonable. But you're assured that even if something was deleted that shouldn't have been deleted, it's easy to recover from that with Salto. We can do like that first demonstration I did. We just go back and pick sweet scripts from, from a week ago or 2 weeks ago or 2 months ago or 2 years ago, and put them back into the environment quite easily. So you no longer need to keep, a version 1 of SweetScript A and version 2 and version 3, and then delete the versions 1 and 2 only to find someone still using the old version. And that's all the worry about deleting those and cleaning up those tech debt and getting to some of your goals about having a simpler and more manageable NetSuite environment can be facilitated by this peace of mind that there isn't anything that's going to come and bite you later, because you can always go back and get it. And that was perfect timing because my fetch just finished. Any commentary on that bit of chat?
I do have a question here.
Okay.
It's a long one, so I'm going to read it all. But this one's from Shan.
Okay. Hi,
What
Shannon.
what
I know
happens?
Shan.
Oh, okay. What happens if the fetch is done and we refresh the sandbox
Okay.
and we find some unusual behavior after the release
Mhm.
that affects some items or custom fields have disappeared, and
Mhm.
then the current fetch does not pick up on the changes after the refresh. I'm reading slowly because I'm a little
Yeah.
unclear on the question here, but so
Right.
will we be able to go back prior to the sandbox refresh and restore? I think that's the crux of the question right there.
It's an interesting question. So pardon me for 1 second. Sorry, I got a frog in my throat. So one of the things that we do at Salto when we're onboarding our customers is to make sure that we are fetching all of the appropriate elements that they would want to manage, either on a day-to-day basis from a change management perspective or for a long-term storage and restoration perspective. The requirement for a restore, of course, is that Salto had fetched that element prior to the restore requirement. So it would require some kind of onboarding help to make sure that we're capturing all the stuff that you're worried about. By default, we capture most, if not all of it, but there are occasionally some things like, for example, instances of custom records. By default, we don't collect instances. We can easily turn that on. We turn it on for custom records that typically don't have more than well, certainly a custom record with 1 million lines of or 1 million records is probably not what we want to do. But for configuration type ones that have 100 or 1,000 instances, that's okay. So that's an example of having to turn on functionality that we would do with customers during the onboarding process to make sure that is. So the requirement for doing a restore, of course, is that the fetch has previously read that information. I hope I understood your question right, Shan.
Yeah, feel free to add clarifications for us. I was a little bit uncertain about it
Yeah.
as well. But yeah, as long as we have a snapshot before the refresh, we can
Mhm.
always do another one, to get the current
Mhm.
snapshot, and then we can
Yeah.
compare those and we can restore again selectively, just like we saw Jeff do
Yeah.
already.
Yeah. So here we are. I've got a fetch at 12:30, and I think if I look at this fetch, I should see some things that were deleted, if I'm not mistaken here. Or is this the one? Yeah, okay, good. So there's a bunch of stuff that's been deleted here, right? So that fetch is the current fetch. I can't restore the current fetch because that's the latest one. But the one before it, uh, which happened at 12:18, that should have the elements in question. So this is like the pre. In fact, I can edit this. I can call this thing, the pre uh, refresh fetch full backup, basically. Okay, so that's that. I can rename this thing now. And now this, I can come back to this anytime, right? So I know what day it was. I can give it a name. This one here, I can rename it just for fun. I'll do the post refresh fetch. Now we don't really need this one, but it might be useful for us. It's another restore point later on if we make some mistakes. But at the moment, what I'm most concerned about is taking some of that pre-refresh functionality and restoring some of it selectively. So we're going to do that same thing again, right? We're going to stand those two environments next to each other. The November 21st at 1216 environment versus the environment that we've just fetched a moment ago, and we're going to document all of the differences between those two environments. And here, there's a very small number of changes, right? So all those things that I deleted will be here. Sometimes some forms get updated as well. We're going to ignore the form bits, but forms often get updated with the applies to functionality. So now I've got this workflow. It's an addition, right? It doesn't exist in my target environment. It only exists in my source environment. My source environment is from 1216. My target environment is from post refresh. So this thing is an addition. So I'm going to grab that. I'm going to add that in now. Don't forget, Salto has this really detailed map of what depends on what. And so when you're restoring things, it's very important, of course, that you restore all the stuff that's dependent. So I've got 3 missing dependencies here. There are some transaction body fields. Remember, I deleted a couple of transaction body fields. So I'm going to grab those. And I also deleted a workflow action script. So I'm going to grab that as well. And they disappear from this missing tab here. And I kind of am expecting to see the file too. Did I get the file? No, I didn't get the file. Hold on. Maybe. Interesting. Okay. I'm expecting the workflow action script also to be there, but maybe I failed to delete that. That's possible. I thought I did, but all right. Let's go ahead and see what happens here. Law of demos. So if something messes up here, give me some slack. All right, cool.
Live.
So I've got the workflow that I want to restore, and it had some other stuff that got deleted as part of this refresh as well. And now it's as simple as moving forward again with the preview of the update, and then actually doing the deployment. Anything come in while we're waiting for this to go?
Not at the moment, but feel free to be brave like Shan. Drop your questions in the Q&A tab.
Yeah.
I'll bring them up to Jeff.
Great. I bet you there's going to be yes. Okay, it's having trouble because it's not getting the file. Interestingly, so I'm gonna okay, I'm gonna leave this here. I'm gonna go back and a little further in time. For whatever reason, it didn't notice that the file was missing here. So I'm gonna go back and say, I don't know. Let's go back to here. Let's do a restore from this guy, and I'll see if I can get that file. If not, I'm gonna go grab it from my other place. GWR amp, it's not there. Okay, I'm actually gonna grab it from my dev environment. I'm gonna compare and deploy dev to prod. So I'm disappointed in myself. But what I'm disappointed about is that that file should have been there. So I'm gonna get it from my dev environment. Okay, we'll grab
I think it's a useful demonstration anyway to show that not only are we tracking the history for an individual account, but we can also compare across accounts. So if we need to pull, transfer things between accounts, we can do that as well. And each account has its own history as well. So we can restore from any point in any account pretty much.
Oops, shoot, I did this the wrong way around. Sorry, folks, I did this the other way around.
I think it's also worth pointing out it's not, Salto is not a data migration tool, so we're not migrating like transactions across, across accounts or restoring those after refreshes or anything like that. We're focused on, there's some limited data, but we're mostly focused on the customizations, the custom objects, and fields, forms, workflows, scripts, things like that. Those custom objects rather than the data. Like Jeff said, some limited data can come over. There's like roles, I think, employees, accounts, and a few select records that we can bring across. But We're not, like I said, we're not bringing over huge volumes of transactions. It's not a data migration tool.
Um, by the way, I could have gone back further in time to look for this thing, but this is my demo environment, so that file pops in and out all the time. I didn't want to go back and look for the specific one, so I'm just going to get it from somewhere else. So I could have gone back, another day and probably tracked it down if this was a normal environment where um, where things weren't being deleted and added all the time because of demos, then it would have done what I wanted it to do. But in this case, I'm going to do a fetch production. That's good. Actually, I'm going to do a specific fetch, make it go a little faster. And this is good because our demo was running a bit fast anyways, so I'm glad this slowed us down. Actually, it has me thinking about some file cabinet, or sorry, some fetch opportunities too. Like we can actually fetch just workflows, right? And then also I'm going to grab dot star. So I'm going to grab all the stuff in the file cabinet from that has my initials in it as well. So this makes the fetch go a little faster. So if you just wanted to fetch a portion of your environment rather than waiting a full 5 minutes or so for a fetch to happen, this will happen in less than a minute or so. So another kind of nice additional functionality. We can kind of pare down what fetching is. We see and you saw a little bit more of the compare and deploy across environments. So we have I have a dev environment and a prod environment. My dev environment can stand as a source in addition to some timed backup from the past. And so we're seeing kind of the gamut of all the things that Salto can do here. So in addition to all the normal stuff. Okay, that's a deployment. Where's my fetch? Just want to make sure we got.
We saw Jeff rename one of the deployments. You can go in and rename any of these. So if you have a sort of rigorous auditing or deployment strategy where you have version numbers, or you need to be able to easily identify specific states, specific snapshots, you can go in and use some sort of naming scheme or structure for these deployments, and then easily organize, keep track of, identify important deployments and snapshots in the histories.
Okay, so now if I come back into my draft restoring, this is this one here. Is that the one I was working on? Yes, this is from, again, we're going to go back to this is the same one I was working on before to do the refresh. Now, what I'm expecting to see here is that the workflow script is available for us to select. So I'm gonna have to go back to my selections process and look for that script to deploy. Actually, no, it's fine. So okay, good, we're ready to go. So since the script has been recovered, now there's no validations here that says I can't do this work. So I'm going to restore the workflow, the transaction body fields, and the transaction the workflow action script. The workflow action scripts file underneath I had to restore in a different way, but normally that would come in just fine. I'm not sure exactly what happened there. So I'm going to click deploy there. And now if I come back to my target environment and I look at workflows, this is that sandbox, you see that I do not have that sales order workflow here yet, but it is about to be restored by Salto. Eric, are there other use cases that you think would be interesting to cover from the perspective of a restore?
Yes, I do. But first, I'm gonna let John has a question, so I'm gonna get to that first, and I don't know if we'll wait, see how long this deployment takes.
This last
just bring
fetch
that in
failed
now.
because I interrupted it.
So yeah, okay. So John has a question. I use
Okay,
custom records to store configurations. Will Salto be able to save these custom records? And then also, how about general company preferences, accounting preferences?
Great question. Absolutely. Okay, cool. Well, while this is
Thank
going,
you,
it's gonna
John.
take another second or two. We're gonna come back and look at see that it got replaced here. But while we're waiting for that to happen, I'm gonna show you the answer to those two questions. So the first one is custom records. By default, we only get the configuration for the custom records, but we are able to say for specific custom records, like for this one, for example, oh, not here in my dev environment, I do this, not in my product environment. So if I look in my dev environment at that custom record, it's called self-referential list. Okay, you can see that I have not only I have the field definition for this custom record, but I also have instances of that custom record. So R1, R2, R3, R4, and these two here are all instances of that custom record. So you can see that we are storing not just the configuration for the custom record, but also each instance. Now that doesn't happen by default because, like I said before, sometimes there's millions of records. But for any particular custom record you would like to grab the instance for, whether it's configuration or even if it's actual data, we can grab all those as long as it's not too big. There's no real hard definition of too big. It's just a matter of how long fetches take, really. And then your second question was, oh, the settings. So yes, we
Preferences.
get accounting preferences and settings, which is kind of cool. I can also compare those, right? Either from I compare dev to prod or sandbox to go live, right? It's a great pre-go live step is to make sure that these are all aligned between your sandbox and your production environment. But yeah, we do get all the accounting preferences, company features, etc. And you can look at those and compare them across environments. It's a lot easier than the old method of having screenshots to compare your two environments. In fact, you know what? While we're waiting for that stuff, I'm actually gonna do a quick compare and deploy from dev to prod.
Yeah, I think that the preference comparison is really good especially during implementation. I feel like that's a time where preferences are and settings are in flux a lot, and that can make stuff really wonky, and it's really hard to track those differences down. So being able to just compare those directly in Salto is fantastic. Makes things so much easier.
Yeah. So here's that comparison. So console invoices is set to no in my target environment, and if I wanted to, if I actually wanted to promote that, I could set it to yes if I wanted to. So the semantics here is like this is the target market. This is where it was set. We're going to replace this no with this yes. So that's how it's set in the source environment. I'm not sure if there's any more, but yeah, there's one. Yeah, so this doesn't exist in my source environment. It only exists in the target environment. So that's another difference. I can also see them side by side in the NACL view, right? So this is the same information. It's just in a slightly different representation. So I can see here that this here is defined in my source environment, but not in my target environment. And I can see the similar deletions, right? So so that's how that looks. All right. Cool. Well, let's go back to our comparison here. Compare and deploy. So that's finished. All right, so I did that restore. If I look at the status of this restore, I can click on that and I can see that its results were successful. Great. It was pushed up into a GitHub repo if you want to. You don't need that, but it's just a nice extra belt and suspenders. Or if it's part of a broader CI/CD process, we can kind of comply with all that too. Now, if I go back and I look at my sandbox post refresh, now I've restored that workflow in all of its glory, and I can continue the work that I was doing on that. Cool. All right, slightly longer path than I was hoping to accomplish, but you know, the data is all there. Every time we do a fetch, we collect it all, and can do some restores from that collected data in the future. Cool. All right. I think that's sort of what I had to discuss, and then I'm more than happy to kind of take some questions and open the floor.
Yeah. I'm not sure, Eric, if we have a closing poll to conduct. Now would be a good time for that. For you in the audience, if you've got questions for Jeff, now is the time. Yeah, sounds like we do have a closing poll. So stick around, fill that out. Let's see. Yeah, I think you mentioned a couple times. Okay, that poll is up and live. You mentioned a couple times, tying into the CI/CD process or Git. So
Mm-hmm.
if you're a team that already has your own sort of processes, maybe you have developers who are using SDF, how does Salto sort of tie in
Yeah, great
to
question.
that?
I think I've got an example of that here. Maybe I've got it over here somewhere. Hang on. Go to this one, and I think it's in my UAT environment. So here I've got a typical, dev UAT prod. This particular set of NetSuite instances, I'm governing the deployment in a different, more complex, more robust way, using a combination of SDF, SDA, SDX, SDF. The problem is
SDF.
Salesforce created something called SFDX, and NetSuite has SDF, and we support both of those things, and it becomes very confusing to keep the acronym. So forgive me. Um, so we can support an environment where developers are developing in WebStorm or VS Code, and checking out a branch, creating a branch, modifying code, committing to that branch, and then asking to merge that branch with the next higher environment through a pull request. And that pull request actually gets injected into Salto, and it looks a lot like this, where it's just another, for us, it's just another deployment that gets created and potentially automatically actually run. And you can do things like, have code reviews and have test integrations and all that as part of a full pipeline. And Salto can be a key part of that, and also a consolidating tool that allows both the developers who are doing SDF development in VS Code or WebStorm to participate in a process where also all the administrative changes, like changes to workflows and additional fields and all that all happens within the same kind of structure, and it gives us this combination of developer work. All the ones here that say SFDX pull request or SDF pull request, that was generated by developers. Compare and deploy of these workflows, that's stuff that was done by more of the administrative team, and we get a full list of everything in here, and so that both all the development activity and the more declarative work can be done can be consolidated within a single platform, and you get visibility and tracking and monitoring of that. So it's a real nice way of integrating a full CI/CD process with both the developer community, which are used to that, but also including the administrative community in a way that's really easy to use, like I was just showing you, and they become part of that CI/CD process.
Yeah, traditionally those are two really separate processes in the NetSuite space. You usually have the admins over there doing their thing, and the developers are over there doing their thing. Salto helps you bring them together, gets everyone sort of deploying the same way at the same time and coordinate. It makes that coordination so much simpler.
It's the old
Uh,
DevOps story, right? Where it used, DevOps came about because dev and ops were separate. Dev would develop some code, they'd throw that code over the fence to the ops team who would try and deploy it, and it wouldn't work. And then they'd say, "Hey, dev
throw it
folks,
back
what
over.
happened?" And they'd say, "Well, it worked on my laptop," right? And then only when those two communities began to say, "Hey, look, why don't we come together and create this thing called DevOps," was that problem solved. And I think that's what we're trying to do here for the business applications as well.
Yeah. I do have another question from John here. You mentioned a developer account or a test drive account. Can you confirm whether we can connect to NetSuite's developer accounts?
Yes, we always see our NetSuite instances and the SDF API and the SweetScript API. So as long as we have a Salto SweetScript, as long as those two things are available in an instance, we can see it like any other instance. Eric, am I missing any subtleties there about the nature of a developer instance?
Nope, not that I'm aware of.
Yeah.
Salto there's a small Suite app that gets installed. So as long as you can install that Suite app in the account, whether it's a test drive, a sandbox, production, developer, as long as you can install that Suite app, you can connect to that account with Salto.
And if you look at my original one here, where I've got NS here. So I've got four NetSuite accounts. Some of them are duplicates. Looks like there's some duplicates here, but I can connect to any number of NetSuite accounts and treat them as a source or a target for any of my comparisons. We're very flexible there. it's good for like, taking some hot fixes in production and pushing them back to the sandbox environments. That's an easy thing to do as well.
Yep. When as far as I know, you can connect them to release previews when those are available as well.
Yep.
So
Yep.
you can do interesting comparisons there
Yeah.
between a release preview and a current production account, sandbox account, whatever it might be. It's just another account to Salto.
New company features that show up are kind of fun to look at when you have a release
Yeah.
preview.
Yep. Or if they change some field values or something like that in those preferences or things like that. So they do some really interesting comparisons that way. Right. I don't have any other questions. I don't see any other questions from the audience. So now's the time to get them in. Otherwise, Jeff, anything else that you want to show off?
Nothing I wanted to show off today. I think what I'd love to say is that if you wanted to get a sense of what Salto is about, please, of course, go and have a look at salto.io, where you will find the ability to set up a trial if you wanted to, salto.io. You'll also see things like the pricing page, etc. But you can try for free. You can request a demo from me or my colleagues, and we would love to get engaged with you and show you the depth of and breadth of what Salto is capable of.
Yeah. And additionally, like I said, we have been doing these sorts of demonstrations all year, and we've covered a whole series of features and use cases beyond what we covered today. So, and all of those are posted up on the Salto YouTube channel. So definitely go check those videos out to get an even greater idea of the scope and the capabilities of Salto.
And there's some good articles as well in our blogs and webinars and such. So
All kinds of
here's some of
resources
them.
out there. Right.
Yeah.
Otherwise, thank you, Jeff. Thank you, everyone out there, for joining us, asking questions, participating. And I think that's all we have for today.
Sounds great. Thanks everybody for coming by and spending some time with me. Thanks, Eric, for putting this together
Jeff.
and the
Of course.